Today we are going to talk about migration with our guest speaker, Lorenz Wiese. He holds a PhD in politics and public administration and mainly focuses, his research mainly focuses on global comparison of different refugee or migration regimes. On top of that, he's co-founder and board member of Café Mondial in Constance, that he will be also talking about in his speech today. He has been living worldwide in Mexico, Brazil, Germany, and working in human rights field. So, Lorenz, you have the floor. Please guide us through your presentation.
Thank you very much, Anna. And it's so nice to see all of you out there in different parts of the world joining today. I'm really glad. I'm really thrilled to be that you guys invited me today for this talk that I'm trying to give to make you understand a little bit more about the topic of migration and also to maybe delve into becoming active in this field, as I would not only consider myself an academic working in the field of refugee and migration studies, but also an activist, somebody who has always tried to stay in touch with the work on the ground, so to say. So that's why I used the subtitle for this talk, From Understanding to Action. Also in advance, I want to say that I'm giving this talk today on my personal capacity. So it's not something that I'm doing in any of my positions at the university. It's rather my personal experience, which I want to share with you guys. In order to get to know you a little bit more, I would like to start with a little exercise to make it a little bit interactive from the beginning on. So the first thing I would really like to ask you to do is to fill in the Padlet map that's going to be sent around in the chat right now by adding the place where you are based or where you're living most of your life. Maybe if you're in a different place right now, just indicate one or two places or how many places you think that would describe best the living situation of you guys. Just by putting the place on the Padlet map by using the plus on the top right of the screen. I have seen that many of you have already written into the chat where they are based, but so I can get a little overview of whom we are talking to today. So I will have a look. Is the map already filling? Can you guys see the map now? Yes, it's working. I have many places popping up there. This is great. As you can see, I did not only put the place where I am right now, which is in Erlangen, Germany, but also the place that I'm going to talk about most today, which is the southern end of Germany at the border to Switzerland. And I also put the places here in Mexico, Peru, and Brazil, where I was living and studying some years ago, to show you some kind of my own migration experience, migrating not only within Germany for several times, but also being a mobile person, so to say, studying in other places, going back and forth between different places. So this is really great. I'm going to zoom in a little bit into the map here. So we have people from all over Europe. This is amazing to see where you guys are based. So I think there's not many more places popping up right now. Okay, so we do have Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Germany, Belgium, Denmark, Serbia. I will not read them all out, but you can see that it's a really diverse audience that we're having today in this call, and I'm really glad about that. Okay, so as a next little to-do, I would ask you to fill in the Menti, because I want to get to know also something about your backgrounds and some of your experience in the field of migration, working with migrant populations before I go to the core of my talk. So you will find this link in the chat, and please again, just click on it and answer the questions. It's going to be 2 questions, and once you have answered both of them, we can see the results. Okay, so most of you are still living in the same country that we're born in, but some of you have already moved elsewhere, moved sometimes to other places, or have continued to live in another country. So yeah, we do have some migration experience in the virtual room today. Okay, it's gonna still wait for some seconds because I have more answers popping up. Yeah, but the big picture is staying constant. Most of you are still living in the same country you're born in, but yeah, maybe nearly half of the participants who answered the Menti now said that they're living in another country. So this was the first question, and now I want to move on to the second one. Okay, what do we have here? This is the question asking whether you have experience in working with migrants, refugees, mobile people, whatsoever. And most of you say that you have some experience in that field. This is good to know. So I'm not giving you like the first introduction to the topic. You already have some experience. And for those of you who answered no to this question, I'm trying to make the talk as understandable as possible, to really try to answer the questions that you maybe also have in the end about whatever comes up. Okay, thanks for...
Lorenz, maybe afterwards you could send us, the team, the results, and then we could, together with follow-up email, also share it with the participants so they can also see the result, if you don't mind.
Okay, there's still some more answers coming in, but I think the picture remains rather stable, that the big majority of you guys already have some experience working with migrant populations. So thanks for sharing this with me. Now I have a bit of a bigger understanding, a better understanding of whom I'm talking to, which is always a bit difficult if you don't have the chance to really meet in person. But I think it also gives us the chance to meet from all the different places that we are in. And I'm really thankful to the team of Salto that you organized that. And thanks again for inviting me. Now I will directly delve into the topic. Well, migration, as I was asked to talk about migration, is such a huge topic that, of course, I will not be able to go into every detail about migration studies, about migration policy, about different types of migration. I would rather try to give you some first-hand experience of how it was for me as an activist, as somebody who tried to engage in the field of migration, working with migrants to further our common goals. And that was for us in Constance at the border of Germany and Switzerland to build a social sculpture. The broader topic is embracing diversity. So that's exactly what we tried to do, to build up a social sculpture with people from all over the world, mobile persons, migrants, refugees, all alike. And in that way, trying to create a society of the many in our city, or trying to contribute to a society of the many also in other places, by, for example, giving workshops and giving talks like this today. So I hope that at the end of my talk, you will understand a little bit better what I mean when I talk about the social sculpture and the society of the many. First of all, I would like to give you a distinction that's really important. Of course, if you see, okay, Lorenz was living in Mexico and in Brazil, he was studying here and there. He is a really privileged person. He could travel wherever and study. There are other digital nomads traveling around the world and using the world as some kind of a buffet, choosing the best that they can find and staying for how long they feel comfortable. And if they get bored, they move on to another place. Maybe some of you have this experience. Maybe some of you have met backpackers or other mobile persons just traveling around the world. This is not the kind of person of migrants that I'm usually talking about and working with. It's rather this kind of mobile persons that you see here on the right side of the screen that had to flee from where they were born or where they grew up due to different reasons, and that maybe got stuck in refugee camps or maybe tried to enter a different country, try to find a better way of living for themselves and their families, try to improve their chances and their perspectives. So this is why I wanted to make this clear in the beginning, as migration is such a huge topic. I'm not talking about like tourists or students that much. Of course, it's also part of the target group when we talk about migrants in a different place or in the city. But I think the more critical group of migrants is the refugees or the forced migrants. And this is also the focus of my talk today. So I'm going to start right away with the practical example that I promised you. That is the Café Mondial. The Café Mondial is our project at the border, as I said, of Germany and Switzerland in the city of Constance. And our aim was to fill the idea of diversity of the social sculpture with life. And how did we do that? So first, in the beginning, we were doing research on how this is being done in different cities. And we came across with this beautiful example in the city of Augsburg in Bavaria that's called Grand Hotel Cosmopolis. So it's a cosmopolitan thinking, an idea of people living together and sharing their skills, sharing their knowledge, and building, creating a place together where they all feel safe and they all feel at home. So we did a group visit of this Grand Hotel Cosmopolis, and the people there showed us around, and was so inspiring that we came back home to Constance, and then just the day after decided that Constance, the city of Constance, which is a tiny university city, needs such a place as well, as there was nothing alike. When I'm saying we, well, it were some friends, activists who had become active in the field of helping refugees, supporting newcomers to the city already before that. But then in the year 2015, as you might know, it were just many, many more asylum seekers reaching Germany, reaching different parts of Europe, also reaching the city of Constance. And there was no space for any kind of encounter for the population that had been living in the city of Constance before, and those who had to flee there, who had to migrate there and try to find a home in this new city. So yeah, that's what we did. We founded an NGO and said, okay, we are looking for a place where we can have this encounter on a daily basis, where we don't have to go into the refugee shelters, for example, which is an obstacle for many people, I think, that are having maybe prejudice or that are scared of going into these places for different reasons. But so to say, neutral place where everybody feels welcome and where everybody can engage and interact with each other. So the idea was to have like really a cafe, a nice place where you like spending your time, and also have a stage for culture, for music, a kitchen for cooking together, and some different offers for these migrant populations to put diversity in action, as I put it here. So this is just some impressions of how the Café Mondial looked until before the Corona crisis, when we had to close it for the time being, unfortunately. So here you can just see how we had different workshops and art projects together, just playing table football. Or here to the right side, you can see literature circle, where we would read literature from all over the world all together, and try to attract people that are interested in one or the other field of engagement. Of course, it was not that straightforward to find a place. That was a big hassle, to be honest. We first had to do a Café Mondial on tour. That was, we moved around in the city of Constance and tried to introduce our concept to the society of the city, tried to make alliances, tried to find partners that would support our cause. And then after some months of going on tour and playing different kinds of events in different locations, we found this building, which actually belonged to the city and which was rather empty. You could rent it out for weddings or for birthday parties, but it was basically an empty building that belonged to the city. So we were like, okay, this is the place where we want to move in. And we tried to put all our effort into making this place the Café Mondial that we had in mind, like to implement this vision in reality. And we got lucky because the city council was in favor of our idea. And so we could really do that. We renovated the place together. It looked really shitty before, to be honest. And then we managed to renovate it together with refugees, with migrants, with some homeless people, with everybody who wanted to become active in the Café Mondial. And that's what it's looking right now. And it was a great success, I would say, to be able to find this place and to fill it with our ideas. One of our basic ideas was not to do everything on our own. We figured out that there are many other groups working with migrants, working with international students in the city already. So why shouldn't we just bring them all together and offer them one roof for their ideas, for their projects, for their groups and ideas? So this is just some examples. I could put like 20 different groups in this house, but this would make the slide maybe overloaded. So I realized that I would just put the most important ones for me, most important ones, which are here, for example, the psychosocial support by a group of students who study psychology with the name Attendo. So there you could go as a migrant or refugee if you have like a trauma or psychological issues and need somebody to talk to. They were like a easygoing group of young folks who would offer their time, and also translation to other languages, to have a private talk, and maybe then also to have a contact already to people working in the field of psychological help. And sometimes they could also do a transferal to grown-up psychologists, so to say, if that was needed. Then you would have the refugee law clinic. Maybe some of you are familiar with this idea. They have it in many German cities, at least, where refugees can go if they have difficulties with the paperwork, where they can find support for issues with the law and try to find support if they don't have money for lawyers or so on. You also have the local group of Amnesty International. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that initiative. So they also use the Café Mondial to have their group meetings and to organize different kinds of events and discussions. The Black Lives Matter organization group just started using the Café Mondial last year. And here to the right, you can see another really great initiative, actually. It got the prize of one of the best initiatives in this field for whole Germany. That's called Constance Integrates. So the idea was to find a flat for newcomers, refugees that would otherwise find it difficult to have a place in Constance. So they did match people, and they still do it. They are matching people that are having difficulties in finding a flat with those who have maybe an empty space in their flats or in their houses, or maybe want to live together with a person from elsewhere and don't know like how to find the right persons. So this is just some examples of how to cooperate with local actors in your city. I think it's a really important takeaway for us also, that you don't need to do everything on your own, but that it's also a good idea to reach out and try to find out who's doing what in the field already and cooperate with them. I already told you about some of the ideas that we came up with to make it as attractive as possible. So here's just some examples, some impressions of a music evening with some African drums, a dance event with here like some Arab dances, or like creating and building masks together to have like interactive formats with children. And here on the bottom left, you can see the team as it was in the beginning. So you can also see here, it's a really diverse team, all ages, all origins, so to say. Some were students to the city of Constance. Some were based there for longer and are still there. Some were refugees that had to come to the city. Some were second generation migrants, third generation migrants, just people who found our idea relevant and wanted to participate. And we also made it possible for everybody to bring in their ideas. And it's like a really a structure of low hierarchies. Actually, we tried no hierarchies, but you still need a board. So that's the only thing. But we tried to make it as accessible for everybody from day one on. This is one particular example here that I want to share with you guys. It's called My Foreign Twin. And the idea was that everybody has a birthday, right? So why shouldn't you match people that were born on the same day with somebody who is from elsewhere and has just moved to the city recently for different reasons, to have like this easy contact and this way of talking to each other based on, oh, we were born on the same day. So I'm trying to show you now what we did there. It's a short video that I'm going to share with you, and it's in German, so I'm going to translate the most important parts of it. So this was the first encounter of people in the Café Mondial some years ago, where we had asked to just join us if they were interested in the project, and we didn't tell them before what's going to happen. We just said, okay, you're interested in an interesting project, so come to the Café Mondial on that date, and then you will see. So that was October 2016, when refugees and people in the city of Constance met for the first time. We had some moderators and started interacting, making people interact, and actually found out that was an encounter full of respect and full of curiosity, actually. So they got to know each other, tried to find out who's in the room, and tried to then find out who could be their foreign twin. So the idea was supported by some foundations and so on. It was actually well supported by the city and by some agency that also did this nice video clip. And you can see here, this is the first encounter of the refugees and migrants and the locals. We tried to speak in easy German or maybe sometimes English. We tried to, as I did in the beginning with the Padlet map, have a map where everybody could show where they came from, and maybe have this as a first contact, talking about their countries of origin, talking about their ways that made them end up in Germany and in the city of Constance. What were their experiences with the local population? And you can see here, it's like a really, it's a lot of curiosity that was in the air from the first day on. Then I'm going to move forward a little bit. You can see here that they would then paint themselves. That was an idea for us, that you can interact without having to talk to each other too much if you have language barriers. But I guess everybody can paint a nice sketch of themselves, and that's what we did there, to have them become active as well and not just sit there and wait for what is being said in front. These paintings were then collected by our nice facilitator, and they were told that something is going to be done with the paintings, and there's going to be a surprise in a few days. And then they were told to show up again at the Café Mondial on a certain date, and that's what they did. And in the meantime, we did a lot of background work. So 2 weeks later, we were ready to present the foreign twins to each other. So they would find now the paintings of the other person that had painted themselves in this envelope, and they were introduced to each other as, look, this is your foreign twin. And you can see here, it made people like really happy, and it was such a fun situation to see that this person is actually born on the same day as I am, for example. To be honest, we did find some people that were not really born on the same day, but only in the same year. But we figured that this is also worth trying, and we did not want to say, okay, now this doesn't work, and you can only stay if you were born on the exact same date. But actually we found some twins that were born on the same date. And yeah, that was a really nice experience for all of us, I guess. And we are really happy that we could make it. And we asked the participants later on, did you stay in contact with your foreign twin? And it actually worked. They sometimes even became friends, or they would hang out together. And it's just a fun idea of encountering somebody else that you would usually not meet on the street, or that you would not feel like saying hi to when he or she walks by in a supermarket or in the neighborhood. So the last thing was to take photos of those that wanted to be shown in the public, because we said, you know, this is nice if we just do it for ourselves and for the lucky ones who found their twins, but actually we want to go further, and we want to share this, what we did, with the whole city, and to produce this video clip, but also to have this project visible in the city of Constance. So yeah, it was not quite cheap, but I think it was completely worth it, because it actually made many people aware of these similarities between newcomers and those that are in Constance for longer. So we did this poster campaign that you can see here, born in Aleppo and in Constance on the very same date. And these posters would be around in Constance for a long time. Another project that we had, that we actually repeated every summer, was football against racism. I think it's something that's really easy to organize. You just need people that like playing football. So you could sign up with a team and say, okay, I'm in, I want to play football in this tournament. And the idea was just to have the whole city invited to show the diversity of the people that are in Constance, be them international students, migrants, refugees, or just Germans, all alike. So this was just some experiences from our work in a nutshell. And I'm sure if you have questions later on, we can also answer them in the discussion. But now I want to take you a step back. So what's the foundation? What's the, so to say, theory, the ideas behind that? And I was asked to not only talk about newcomers that are coming to a new country themselves, but also about second-generation migrants, third-generation migrants. So I'm trying to make up the whole picture on the next slides for you guys. So what's on your mind when you reach a new country, a new city for the first time, and you know, oh, I'm going to live here for some time now, be it just a few weeks, maybe 1 semester, 2 semesters studying there, maybe moving there forever, or maybe don't knowing when you can go back because there's a war going on in your country. So of course it's, first of all, safety for refugees, at least, because they didn't find safety where they were at home. They didn't find safety on the routes. So the first thing I would say that comes to everybody's minds, and if you have this pyramid of needs in mind, is a safe place to stay, and maybe food and security and housing. Yeah. Then, of course, you have to interact with the institutions. You have to find a way to stay legally. So maybe you have to interact with a federal ministry that tells you if you can have a status as a refugee or not, that maybe you have to renew your visa and so on. So the institutions are a huge thought, so to say, on the first days and the first months when after arriving to a new country. Then of course you need employment or some other way to make money, to make a living, but also maybe to send money home if your family is in need, and maybe they saved money to send you abroad in order for you to send remittances, as these are called. In some countries, these remittances are really important part of the economic performance of the whole country. So this is a really huge transfer of money from richer to poorer countries, so to say. That's really important. And then, of course, also arriving and meeting people. And if you remember the slide where I showed you the Café Mondial, the roof with all these different groups interacting and offering their counseling and support in the Café Mondial, you will note that I think most of these short-term needs were met in the Café Mondial and met by different groups. So organizing a flat for somebody, organizing yeah, to contacts to maybe employers or just friends that you can hang out with to feel at home. And also having somebody to talk to if you have questions regarding the institutions, the law, asylum regime, and so on. So that's the short-term needs. But of course, then once you stay in the country for longer, or maybe your parents came to the country and you were actually born there, then maybe your needs start to change gradually over time. Questions like belonging come to your mind, and political participation. How can I actually interfere and not only be a passive and quiet member of society? How can I be somebody whose voice is being heard in this place? So the idea of becoming one of them, I think, relates to the feeling of belonging. Maybe some people will say, okay, I don't try to become one of them. I will always remain the foreigner. But I think as soon as you're in the second generation, third generation, this is going to be more and more relevant. Of course, education is a big topic as well. You want to, yeah, you want to educate yourself, maybe your own children. You want to have access to schools, to universities. And also related to the issue of political participation, I would say, is the issue of fighting discrimination, trying to contribute to a society in which there is no discrimination based on race or other crazy concepts that the humans came up with, which are actually not making any sense, because as you just saw in the example of my foreign twin, there's always more similarities between humankind than differences that give you a reason to discriminate for. So we also tried in the Café Mondial to answer these longer term needs, so to say, to have a chance for somebody who maybe is excluded from voting because they don't have German citizenship to still become active as a member of society in our association, in our NGO. And we tried to make everybody feel welcome and feel valued from the first day on. So some more ideas that maybe help you guys to engage when you're working with migrants. I think a big mistake that's being made a lot on the media and in the mainstream discourse is that you think, okay, there are different groups and this is a clear-cut distinction between these groups. I would say the boundaries are very much blurred. There's no black and white. There's no such thing as a binary us and them, because everybody belongs to so many different groups. Your identity can be shaped by so many different factors. You can be a woman, a teacher, you can be a migrant, you can be a student, you can be a newcomer to a town, you can be everything at the same time. And these different identities, I would say, make you the person that you are. And so it does not make any sense to just distinguish between two different categories. So in working with refugees and migrants, I would say one of my most important takeaways was to see the skills and the competences that the persons bring, and not just their status as a refugee or a migrant. Then, as I already mentioned, I was traveling a lot between places. I was living in different places, and I also had this question of where to belong. Maybe some of you share this question. Actually, I would say some people do have a strong feeling of belonging to one place, or maybe even to several places, as it was the case for me after coming back from some years in Latin America. But there are also others who feel not to belong anywhere. So it may be stateless persons, it may be persons that had to flee, maybe persons who are just not feeling welcome anywhere. And then finally, because I was asked to also tell something about how we interact in our work, in our solidarity work with the different populations, I would say there's a huge need of persons to become active, being refugees or homeless or whatsoever, to also give something back to the community that welcomed them and that hosts them. So this is the issue of reciprocity. And also, for example, for homeless people, they have this experience of being stuck somewhere out there, of not having a place where it's cozy and warm. So maybe this is also a reason for them to try to engage for other persons that are having a difficult time. So I think this is maybe one of the reasons why we had such a diverse group engaging at the Café Mondial. There's some issues also that we came across. It's not that always nice and always fluffy and just happy people running around. Of course, there are some issues, and I also want to share these with you guys, and maybe you can also share the issues that you came across with in your daily work with us or in the breakout sessions later on. Be really happy to hear about these. One issue that I want to talk about prominently today in this talk is the issue of paternalism. So especially if you feel like you're the one supporting the newcomers, supporting the migrants, I know everything about this city, they don't know anything, there's automatically some kind of a hierarchy. And you feel like you're the one helping and supporting and being so generous, and the other one being helpless and just deserving help and pity. This is something that we actually come across with quite often, and that's why I put it in every talk and try to talk about it with everybody working in this field. I have the experience that many, well, especially elderly Germans, but not only, have this tendency to view the newcomers as, oh, these are my newcomers now and my refugees now if I help them. And they expect a lot of gratitude, and then they are really pissed if they don't get this gratitude, so to say. So this is something to really have in mind. I have this little quote here for you guys that I find really interesting, also coming back also to the previous slide of the blurred boundaries. People don't really want to be put into categories. They want to be perceived and valued as the individual person that they are. So the quote goes, "I am being made a refugee. I don't want to be a refugee for you. Don't want to be the friend of someone who only wants to be friends with me because I seem to fit into this category." So maybe we can also discuss that later on. Maybe you have similar experience, people having that sentiment. And also related to this point of the hierarchy of these different groups of people, different categories, is the whole issue of being aware of history, being aware of how the world became this place in which we live now, which was a big deal, influenced by colonialism. And we are here, I saw on the map, most of you guys are based in Europe. We were the ones colonizing the rest of the world. So always be aware and don't forget about these structures of the past. There were so many inequalities, and actually the exploitation that started in the colonial times sometimes goes on until the date. And there's so many differences still between the global north and the south. And we benefit such a great deal from this exploitation in different ways, that we, to my opinion, have some kind of a responsibility to also engage in those who had to flee from these places because of the situation becoming so dire, or because of having so little perspectives in the countries of origin. So in the bubble here, you can see one statement of some refugees that arrived to Germany that said, you know, actually it's not us that are the ones that should apologize for being here. You guys should apologize for your ancestors making our home countries places that we cannot live in anymore today. Basically, we are here because you were there. Of course, you not talking to us because we didn't go to colonize these places, but our ancestors did. And I think there's a lot of responsibility coming out of this realization. This brings me to the next slide of intersectionality and joint struggles. You might be white or whatever, blue, yellow, purple person, who cares? You can still join the struggles of people that are being discriminated against. You can be, as the guy here on the picture, an Asian, demonstrating in solidarity with people that are being discriminated for their black skin colors. There's many ways of joining other people's struggles. And I think part of this responsibility that I talked about on the last slide is to be aware of how to join these struggles without becoming paternalistic. And yeah, the issue of intersectionality is a huge topic. I can only touch upon it today in this short talk, is that some people have the experience of not only being discriminated for being a refugee or being a migrant, but for being, say, a woman in a patriarchal society and a migrant, or a Black person and a refugee, or so these different sections that interact and that you have to bear in mind when talking about these struggles and migration altogether. So back to our little town at the border of Germany and Switzerland. I told you it's not everybody always nice and happy. We have some issues with the state authorities actually trying to sort out between different sorts of migrants. And this is the example of our friend Harrison, who is actually one of the most important co-workers at the Café Mondial. So we produced this short video clip to make people aware of the situation in Constance. It's like 2 years ago that he received a letter from the state that he should leave Germany and go back to Nigeria after he left Nigeria 10 years ago, and he felt like at home in Constance. And we said, oh, he's a part of us. What do you think? He should go home now. It doesn't make any sense. He's a part of the city. He's a part of our community. So this was a really important struggle, and we tried to do everything possible to have Harrison staying with us, because he's just a friend of us, basically. He's not somebody that you can just rip out of our community. That's what we felt, at least. So we tried to talk to politicians, talk to the media, talk to the city municipal offices, and try to build a big alliance for everybody, telling Harrison should stay. This is some nice pictures of the city that we included into the clip, but I think the most important part is that he feels belonging to Constance. And for us, this was, it was so important to engage against his deportation, because he was first asked to leave Germany voluntarily, which of course is not voluntarily at all, because he was basically being blackmailed to leave, because if he wouldn't leave voluntarily, then they would, the police would come one night and put him in handcuffs and put him into a plane back to Nigeria. And he was really afraid of that. And so were we, of course, to lose this important member of our community. So until now, the good news is he is still in Constance. Our campaign was successful, maybe not forever, but at least temporarily. We managed to show everybody that Harrison is Constance. And we had a petition online that you could sign, and we produced this website and this film, and did, as I said, everything possible. And until now, luckily successful. We hope that maybe now with the new elections in Germany, maybe there will be a chance that some of the laws change, that those people who have been living in Germany and contributing to the society and having a job, having a family, maybe having friends, and integrating for many years should be allowed to stay. But still, it sometimes feels like fighting windmills, so to say. You have this big, huge state apparatus in front of you, and you ask yourself, like, how can I possibly win? We are just some normal citizens, just some tiny creatures here on the ground, and the state is so mighty and has so many ways of interfering in our affairs that it felt difficult. But I want to give you hope and courage. Try to engage, even if it feels sometimes impossible. That brings me to the do's and don'ts. I was asked to present some do's and don'ts for you guys, to not only have this storytelling of my experience, but also what did I take away from it. So I would say, first of all, interacting with migrant populations is such a broad field. It can have so many facets. Be pragmatic, try to feel into the situation, know the actors on the ground, know who does what and where and how to fill a gap that's maybe there. and also when interacting with refugees, migrants, even international students. I think everybody of you who has been living in another country or is still living in another country knows this question. That's often the first question that pops up when you meet somebody new. So where are you from? Like this question, I think, yeah, of course you can ask it, but there are so many more interesting questions to ask because we are all from this planet. And unless people really actively want to talk about it, just be smart and try to avoid it. Ask, what are you doing? What's your interest? What's your work? Whatever, what is your skills? What have you had for breakfast? I think all of these questions are more interesting than the questions, where are you from? Of course, at some point you might find out, but it's not a nice way of welcoming somebody to tell them, oh, basically you don't belong here. I can see that you're not from here. Okay, then the issue of integration. I could give an entire talk on integration as well. I don't have the time, unfortunately, but there's basically one takeaway that I want to share with you guys is that integration in many cases is being perceived or being depicted on the media in the mainstream discourse as the same as assimilation. So people should assimilate to a new country. They should become one that's basically invisible in the big mass, right? But I would rather give you the advice to understand integrating as a two-way process. So I have this picture in mind of the different hills and everybody of us standing on one own little hill that they have built up over their lives, and maybe they were born in a different country and this is the hill for them. But so the idea is to not only stay on the hill and tell everybody else to climb your hill, but to go down to the valley and have a look at the other hills, maybe climb the other hills as well. Try to find out who's there and what's their characteristics, what's their interests and skills, and don't just say, oh, that's not my hill. They should basically do the work and I can just sit here and have a good time. This is a really nice quote in that context, I would say, about empathy and about understanding migrants' needs. You should always have in mind that you cannot really understand somebody until you have walked a mile in their shoes. So try to really find out what's on their minds, try to find out what's their needs, what's their ideas also about becoming a diverse society, and what's their ideas of building a social sculpture together. That's basically the motto of the Café Mondial, was to encounter everybody at eye level. So not to have this paternalistic way of looking down, but to see everybody as personalities with their own strengths and visions that could build this social sculpture together, everybody bringing in their skills and advantages, knowledge. And as I said, people don't really feel comfortable being made the migrant or the refugee for the rest of the group. Try to create situations in which this is not necessary, where they can just feel welcome and step over these boundaries. Related to the issue that I also showed you on the slide with the intersectionality and joining the struggles of communities that are being discriminated against, is a very important claim, is that of critical whiteness. So you should always check your own privileges if you're one of the happy white males mostly that happened to decide over most political decisions in the world. Be critical about this privilege that you have. Try to share your privileges with others. Try to make room also, not always being the one that's talking the most. I'm sorry, I'm talking the most today and I'm white and male, but yeah, I'm aware of it. And I think this is the first step towards critical whiteness. So the last really important claim is that when I talk with, for example, refugees, migrants that are trying to become politically active, trying to become heard, be heard in the sphere of academia also, but also on a local area, for example, is nothing about us without us, or nothing for us without us. So include their voices of the concerned people. Just don't sit on the table and think, okay, what can I do about them or for them? Ask them, what's your take on it? What's your ideas? what's your needs, and avoid again to become paternalistic. And a part of amplifying these experiences of refugees and migrants is to mobilize knowledge on policy outcomes. As I give you the example of Harrison, I don't know if this makes sense to you, but for me, this policy doesn't make much sense that people should leave a place just for some law after living there for 10 years if they feel home there and if they feel belonging there. This is just one example of a policy outcome that has like really adverse effects on the community on the ground. And finally, so this is what I'm doing today, is to talk about what's happening on the good side also. Don't always think about what can go wrong, but create spaces to build upon existing models of everyday hospitality. Find out what is being done, talk about it, share the knowledge, share the good news, and try to learn from others who are doing this work as well. So I would like to thank you very much and end my presentation with this little saying that COVID-19 does not discriminate. Why should you? Why should we? Thank you. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Lorenz. Indeed, it's really interesting and how you present intervening the theory, the practice. It's really empowering, and I think in every one of us in our own places start to think a little bit what we could do maybe more, how we could raise awareness more. So thank you very much. For our participants out there in the chat, there is the link to Lorenz's presentation, and on the final slide you will also see list of literature, follow-up reading that you could also use. Maybe we could all use to educate ourselves more in this topic and go a little bit deeper. Now I would like to pass the floor to Maria if we have any immediate questions for Lorenz or any comments that come from the chat.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you very much, Lorenz, for your amazing presentation. In fact, in the chat, we had a lot of feedback about your presentation, and people are very excited about it. There are some questions for you. So the first comment is that Café Mondial seems like a very nice initiative and a great format that should be promoted around Europe. So the question is practical. Are events done there for free for visitors? And how do you manage to sustain the space and the staff? That's one of the questions. The second comment is that it seems that this is a safe space for everyone. And is it targeting mainly youth of a certain or particular group, or the locals who are not migrants can also tend to be eager to join and learn about other cultures? And the third comment is, how can we support such topic and encourage others to talk more about it?
So thanks. Shall I try to answer these questions first, or are we collecting more?
So far, I think these are the most urgent questions, and if you could just give us an answer that is combining all together, that would be great.
For sure.
More will come after the breakout rooms. So.
Okay, great. So I will try to give a short answer. Thanks for these questions, and thanks for all the nice feedback in the chat. It's really amazing that you guys, I see it's a new record also of participants, and I'm really happy. So the Café Mondial, of course, it's an initiative that had its difficulties, and one of the difficulty always is to find the money, find the resources to do something like that. Not only money, but also the staff, people that engage voluntarily in that. So the question was if the events are for free. Yes, actually that's part of our philosophy, is that everything should be for free, but you can donate as much as you can. So we always said, even if you come for having a coffee or a piece of cake, you don't have to pay if you don't have money. But if you're happening to be a rich person, you can also put 100 euro for a piece of cake in our donation box. So the idea was pay as much as you can, or pay as much as you want. And actually that worked quite well for us, because we didn't want to discriminate against people that don't have so much money. And we thought, like, there's so many coffees already in the city of Constance that are offering cake and coffee for a lot of money. So we want to be different. We want to try to make it all based on donations. And of course, also, well, not of course, we were really lucky actually that we got some big donations right in the beginning. Some enterprises said, okay, this is a good cause, I want to support it. Some private persons just made a big donation on our bank account. So in Germany, I don't know how it's the case in your countries, but you can get some of the donations back from your taxes if you donate to an organization that is deemed to work for the benefit of all. So that also benefited us. And then the rent, we don't actually pay rent. We only pay the expenses for like electricity and water, but the rent is covered by the city. This building belongs to the city of Constance, and we managed to tell them that we cannot do this on our own. We need your support, so they would subsidize it by paying the rent for their own building. So basically, nobody pays rent to anybody. And then there's the staff. Most of us work voluntarily, but we have 2 persons that have a part-time job for the coordination and for taking care of the house. So kind of a housekeeper, organizer, coordinator jobs. And this is, it's not a well-paid job, but at least we can manage to pay 1 person to do this all the time on a kind of a mini job. So also based on the donations that we have already on our bank account and based on the money that comes in if people have a coffee at our place. There was also for some years support from the state of Baden-Württemberg. This is where Constance is, a federal state in Germany, which would support this coordination person, so to say, by giving us the money to pay him or her. The second question is a safe space for all. Yes, actually, we don't have one target group in mind. We have basically the idea was to have a place for everybody in the city: visitors, students, refugees, elderly people, young people. Everybody should feel welcome there. We try to make it a safe space for everybody. But then, of course, we have different events that would attract different target groups. Like if you have a cooking event, then you would attract somebody else than if you have a dancing event, and so on and so forth. But we always try to make it as accessible and as interesting for everybody. I'm sorry, the third question, I think I forgot it. What was the question? Sorry.
Yes. The question was, how can we support such topic and encourage others to talk about it?
So yes, that's the most difficult question, I would say. There's many ways of trying to be vocal. I mean, you can just start, which is the easiest, talking about these experiences with your friends, with your family. You can maybe give a talk in the school. You can find other examples in your countries. Well, there's different ways. There's also conferences, for example, of initiatives that work in this field, where people from all over Europe interact. For example, United Against Racism is a big network of initiatives that work in the field all over Europe. They have like a newsletter. You can sign up to that. You can apply for their conferences. You can follow what they are uploading on the internet and so on. So there's already a lot being done. You just have to discover it, basically.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're aware that more questions are coming to the chat, and we will have to stop right now for the moment to take more questions from the chat. But please be sure that all these questions, all these comments are going back to Lorenz after the talk as well. And this could also give him an opportunity to enrich an article that he's going to produce after the talk based on the same topic. Now we would like to encourage you to join Zoom rooms, in smaller groups, to talk about your impressions and your maybe initial questions that you have to Lorenz. Let me share my screen with the slide. And we will ask you to come back with a question or one insight that you have after Lorenz's presentation. Please, if you have questions that you put in the chat, you can also take these questions to your smaller groups and elaborate on them and then bring it back. We will be happy to hear all the questions and address them as much as our limited time allows. Please, a spokesperson from group number 1. Unmute yourself and you have the floor.
I think that's our group. I'm not sure we had an actual question. We just shared some reflections and thought it was long, like quite a lot of stuff to process. but not the exact question. So sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it's perfectly understandable. Exactly, a lot of food for thought. And important that you had a discussion within your group and probably shared some of your emotions and immediate findings. Great. Group number 2, room number 2, please, you have the floor. Or whoever speaks now will be room number 2. Room number 3 then? Anybody from the next room?
That's me.
Please.
So we wanted to, well, first I should present myself. I am a migrant. I was born in Uruguay and I came to Spain almost 20 years ago as an illegal immigrant. And I think it's a very nice experience, the café. But I shared with my group, and well, we all agree that we were curious because when you are an illegal immigrant, sometimes you feel reluctant to join these kind of organizations that want to help you with this patronizing aspect of helping. And how do you attract people, immigrants, to join this initiative? And also, how do you attract local people? Because at least in Spain, sometimes it's difficult to local people open their minds and their hearts to migrants, and they want to help them, but they don't want to include them in their I don't know, in their lives, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Flavia, for your question. We have another question in the chat, probably from one of the groups. Could you voice the question yourselves, or maybe I could read it for you, but I think this is something that could be a topic probably of an entire long idtalks session, but maybe shortly to address this. What measures could we take against the visible rise of nationalism and anti-migration policies after or as a result of COVID-19 pandemic? Yeah, that's one question that we have right now in the chat from one of the groups. And yes, next group, please, you have the floor. Room number 4.
Well,
yes, please, Tico.
Well, our question actually is similar to this question that you just read. And our question was like, are we back to the national states again? Because the borders are closed. And yeah, and in this situation, what's with the refugees and other people?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. And we have one more group to take question from. Group number 5, please, you have the floor. Somebody from group number 5?
Yes.
Please, Julia.
We were 3 people, and yeah, we were very inspired by your speech, and we had several questions, but one question is, I will write it in.
Julia, your microphone is muted, so we cannot hear you.
Sorry. I write it in the chat. What are current challenges you have with the NGO actually, for example, with COVID?
Yes, thank you very much. Lorenz, this has been a lot of extensive, wide, big questions. But if you could try to sum it up in like 5 minutes or maybe even less, would be very good.
I will try my best. Also, I don't have answers to everything, as you might be aware of. So I will start maybe with the observations of what's going on in the field of migration and mobile persons due to COVID and the pandemic and the border closures. So actually, it has like really dire effects on mobile populations. As you can imagine, if you are stuck somewhere and you cannot go back or forth, I think the worst example that everybody has in mind being the refugee camps at the Greek-Turkish border, for example, where they were just in a lockdown for many months now, and they don't have any perspective on how to make their lives to go to where they were trying to go or whatever. They were like basically being detained in kind of outdoor prisons. This is what these camps are. But not only for them, I mean, also for people that are stuck somewhere where they just went to work, for example, and now they don't have a way to go out of the country, because then they would not be allowed in again, because it's difficult to get a visa in these times. Also, for example, with refugees, the family reunification, so that you can bring your family once you have a status in Germany or in a European country, is being delayed at the moment. So many are waiting in the camps in the countries where they are at the moment under really horrible conditions. And yeah, their visa basically expires, so they cannot join their families that already made it. This is a big problem. And actually, yeah, for example, the German Minister of the Interior said, okay, now we're trying to work on that to get some dynamic into the field of family reunification again, but it's going really slow. And also, like in some countries, many people are used to being so mobile that they cross the border every day several times. Especially like in some countries in Africa, you have this border crossing trade on which people's lives depend. So right now with the border closure, it's really difficult for them to make a living. And that's why also in the parts of the world that are less privileged, the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown especially that results from the pandemic has like really difficult repercussions for making a living. So this is, I think, the big picture, but also there are some interesting developments on the good side. Again, I promised you to not only talk about the depressing stuff. So for example, Portugal, I think one of you is from Portugal. I don't know if he or she is still in the room, but in Portugal, there was a move by the government. Yeah, it's Henrique, I'm sorry. I know it's you. There was this move to give a kind of temporary regularization to illegal migrants that could not access the health sector before, for example. So this was a really inspiring move also for other governments. I hope that they just realize due to the pandemic that it doesn't make sense to have these different groups that cannot join society, that basically have no access to healthcare, because these groups then become a danger for the rest of the society. So it doesn't make really sense to have these different segments. So this is just one example of something that has maybe had a positive impact also for undocumented persons in Portugal. Then to the challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic brought for our NGO, for the Café Mondial. Well, there is several challenges. Of course, we're still in a very privileged part of the world, so it's not about life and death, but we could not open the Café Mondial, basically. We had to close it for 1 year now, basically. We tried to open it in the summer and could open with some distance rules and hygienic rules. But yeah, it was not the same. It was not as fun as it used to be before. Some offers, we transfer them to the virtual space, like language learning cafe. You can also do it in Zoom. This is maybe an idea that could also serve some of you, your initiatives, but it's not the same, of course. And we have the problem that especially those parts of society that don't have the resources to be online, that don't have a good laptop at their disposal, are excluded from all the online courses. I think most of you are familiar with that, especially when it comes to children learning and homeschooling and all that. That you have this big gap between different parts of the society in all of our countries. And also some of the funding that we used to rely on is now being diverted to other issues. So the municipality of Constance is a rather rich one, but not all the municipalities are that rich, so they cannot support any group that is not like the most important basic needs, so to say. Everything else is yeah, it's limited now. It's like really restricted. And yeah, we have to find a way to get back on top of the agenda with these topics, because now everybody's just talking about, okay, we have to invest for health and vaccines and so on, but forget about the topic of integration, for example, which doesn't disappear just because of the pandemic. It's still a huge topic, but yeah, the interest is just lower now, you could say, because of the other issues. So the biggest question was the what can we do against the rise of COVID nationalism and racism? It's a difficult question. I mean, first of all, go to vote. Try to vote for the parties that don't try to mobilize on xenophobic attitudes. Maybe become politically active yourselves if you can imagine doing that. Go on demonstrations against these tendencies. Yeah, educate yourselves. Try to be a part of educating broader society, as I'm trying to do here today. Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. It's a bigger tendency, this populist backlash, I would say, that we can also observe in different parts of the world now. And there's many intelligent people trying to do something against it, but yeah, not really succeeding. I'm not sure. Well, at least in Germany, it seems that the next elections are going to yield more progressive results, so to say, but we're not sure about that. And then your question, Flavia, thanks for sharing your experience. I don't know how the situation is in Spain. I have not created this Café Mondial in Spain, so I cannot really talk about the situation there, but I can imagine that it must be really hard if the mainstream society has prejudice against the newcomers, especially against illegalized newcomers, to build something like that. But then I would say there's parts of the Spanish society, at least when I was in Spain, I got to know like really open-minded people as well. And maybe just if I was to do something like that in Spain, I would try to mobilize on these parts of the society and maybe try to find a safe space and build alliances with more progressive thinking people who don't have these prejudices in mind and who don't think like, okay, we are here and we don't want these migrants in our places. And what we did at the Café Mondial, well, I tried to explain in my presentation, but to attract locals and newcomers, mobile people, all alike, was to focus on what's basically human. So that's music, that's food, that's having fun together, learning together, interacting. Try to find the common interests, the focusing on the similarities of humankind rather than the things that divide us. I hope that was a short enough answer and I didn't forget any of your questions. Thanks a lot.
Well, there is no time that we could allocate that would be enough to discuss all these questions. So thank you very much. And of course, in no way we are trying to give exhaustive answers to all these big questions. But thank you still very much for your questions, because this will come to enrich the article that Lorenz will be providing after the talk, and that we'll bring to you as Salto Inclusion and Diversity after the whole series. So please stay tuned to us. Now, well, two final and very important, but also really fun things are left to do. I will be asking Olaja, about whom you maybe have forgotten for a minute, now to share with us the graphic recording that she has done throughout the presentation and the question and answers. So Olaja, you have the floor. In the meantime, please leave us a one-word feedback or one word that describes your experience today with us in the chat. And after this, we will come back for final goodbyes and thank yous. Please, Olaja, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see me. You can hear me and see my screen.
Yeah.
Yes, super. Thank you. All right. So yeah, it was indeed a very, very interesting and inspiring sharing of experiences by Lorenz. It was really, really nice to hear and to follow the process that started with a very practical example around here with the Café Mondial, and how it started from inspiration from similar initiatives, then trying to gather support from other people that had a similar mindset or similar inspiration as well. And then also joining forces with other local actors to make the idea even bigger and better and more meaningful. So, for instance, Café Mondial was, the space that they created that was meant to be a platform to address these needs of mobile people, both in short term and also long term. And one of these examples that we heard a lot about was my foreign twin, that was not only a bonding experience, but also became a really good example and a raising awareness activity for the whole community. And then towards the middle of the talk, Lorenz was sharing with us some of the issues that he and their team found along the way, and also some very practical and useful do's and don'ts of if you work in this environment or you're interested in being more active and contributing to change, how you can be approaching this process. So there was many meaningful quotes. I just captured here a bit. This is a quite simple recap, and I will be indeed enriching it more with also the audience contributions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olaja. Like always, this is an exciting moment and also a visual reminder of how many valuable things were spoken about today. Thank you very much. I see that many of you started leaving your one-word reaction or reflection of today's meeting here. And of course, now I would like to pass floor to Lorenz for his closing words, maybe something that you are taking from this activity today. Please, you have the floor now.
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much. It was a really thrilling experience for me to give this talk and to prepare it. Actually, also was a lot of fun for me because I could actually go back to the last years before the COVID pandemic and memorize the good times, so to say, when we came up with all this and all the nice experience for me that I could, build upon now. And it's really nice to hear and to see that I could maybe inspire some of you, and that maybe in some way or the other you will take something home from what I tried to bring across. I'm sure that there will be certain overlaps still in the future of maybe some of us interacting again, maybe coming up with other inclusive projects together. And I also saw in the chat the word hope. I think this is the most important at this time. We don't give up, like we don't just put our heads under the sand and give up and say, okay, populism is on the rise, nationalism is on the rise. Actually, just last year, the whole Black Lives Matter movement was becoming so strong. There's so much happening actually in this field of fighting racism, of fighting discrimination. So this would be the worst moment to give up, I would say. This has been so many struggles for so many years, decades, centuries. Now finally, I think it's kind of erupting and something is happening, and we're still working on it. And everybody of you is welcome to join the movement. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lorenz, from all our team, and I'm sure from all our audience. Everybody, please, you're welcome to follow us on the social media channels of Salto Inclusion and Diversity Resource Center, and join us in 2 weeks, same time, same place, for the next session of idtalks that we will be talking about age and inter-age dialogue. So please have a great continuation of your day and see you next time. Thank yous and goodbyes.